This is the Ecoflow River 3 Plus. And this thing here it's kind of the Goldilocks zone when it comes to Ecoflow's like new line of products. When you're trying to figure out, you don't want to spend too much. You want some power, space is a premium. And listen, I just love the innovation that Ecoflow is doing when it comes to technology, hardware. They're really doing a great job. And I've had an opportunity to test a lot of units. Let me just give you my bottom line up front. If you've been checking this thing out, you're trying to figure out some emergency power, you want to be able to maybe bug out quickly and be able to power some things on the go, maybe a car refrigerator, run an electric blanket, a kettle, a desktop computer, stuff like that. And at $209, retail $299, but $209. This is a great price just for the Ecoflow River 3 Plus. We'll talk about the battery 300 and the battery 600, but this is a great deal. It's a really good deal. I'm going to tell you why I like this so much. I'm going to tell you some areas where it does fall short. You can't ask for everything from a unit this size and at this cost. And we're going to talk about why I think that this might be a good buy for you. This is not a sponsored video. Ecoflow is not paying me for this video. However, the links in the video will be affiliate links. I would appreciate if you do decide to make the purchase to use those links down below because it does help support the channel. Plus, I can get you a discount at least until like around February 9th on Ecoflow on the River 3 Plus. So more on that later. So this is kind of the Goldilocks zone as mentioned before. You have the Ecoflow River 3. This is a 245 watt hour unit. It has a 300 watt inverter in it. Don't sleep on this unit just because it's not as powerful as the next one. It's very small. If you need to charge stuff and you have very, very, very limited spaces, I mean like a pool behind trailer, a pop-up trailer, maybe you're a dorm room, whatever, but you still want emergency power. Don't sleep on the OG River 3. I say OG like it didn't just come out recently. Then you have its big brother, which is the Delta 3 Plus. And this thing is great, but everybody doesn't need a 1 kilowatt hour, battery storage unit. It puts out tons of watts, tons of ports for you. But if you are charging the things that I mentioned, an electric blanket, a car refrigerator, this is a lot of counter space in an RV. This is a lot of room in a camper. And this is a lot of room inside of a tent. And also, this thing is usually around $629. Now, here's the thing. You can always go look at the old Series 2 of the Ecoflow products. This is the Ecoflow River 2 Pro. And this is a great unit, especially the price right now. These are almost a great comparison to one another. And this one here is a 768 watt hour unit. It has an 800 watt inverter. And right now you can get these for like $399, which that's just really hard to beat that price, because if you're thinking about picking this thing up at that current price, it puts this thing at 52 cents a watt hour. I mean, that's really tough. But if you get this, you're going to be missing out on so many features in this unit here. But I do believe that the Ecoflow River 3 Plus, and when you add the batteries, they call it the Max, I do believe that this is the replacement for this unit. The only real benefit of getting this older unit is that if you want these barrel ports here, that might be something that you decide that you really need. Those barrel ports are going to be good for using for some 12 volt type of units. Like sometimes you can use them from like a heating blanket or an immersion heater. Some of those accessories can be used with that type of stuff. It does have more actual plugs for the AC inverter. This one has 4, whereas this one has 3. They're all on the front if that's important to you. And as well as this thing has a larger inverter at 800 watts. But I mean, there's a few things you don't get. You don't get the light that comes with this unit. You can't expand the battery. There's a lot of things missing out of this unit that you almost immediately notice if you decide to get the older unit. But the price is right when it comes to that. But I still think there's reasons other than the pricing where you should go for the newer unit. So let's talk about this as it stands right now. So we're going to unclip So what we have here, this is the Ecoflow River 3 Plus. And as you can see, it does have a detachable battery, which we're going to talk about how goated this is here in a second. But it's a 286 watt hour. This unit right here, this is 286 watt hours. And it does have a 600 watt inverter on it. It is using the newer screen. So if you want the newer screen on this one versus what you're going to get on like the River 3, then that might be important to you. It does have 3 AC outlets. It has one in the front, and then there are 2 in the back. So just in case you want to be able to get to those. And then you're going to see the ports, the input ports on the very back of this unit. You do have a cover for that, and you get the AC input, you get the solar input, and you also get a USB-B port, which we'll talk about here in a second. So you can do 55 volts of solar. It's going to go to 200 watts, 220 watt max when it comes to the solar input. The crazy thing is that it also includes a light, which I think there's only like 2 Ecoflow products that include a light. Those are just so handy. If you're using this inside of a car, an RV, a tent, having a light on this thing, like it just really lets you illuminate an entire area versus having to use a flashlight, which we're everyday carry type of folks. We keep flashlights, but you might want to be able to not always have to pull your flashlight out. The very front, you also get a USB-C port. This USB-C port can do 100 watts of power, and then you have 2 USB-As. So a very compact unit, $209. I think that's a great price. It's kind of like a, I think it's a really good deal as it stands. It kind of puts it in this ballpark that if you get this as it's 73 cents a watt hour, and I have a discount code to get it even cheaper than that. But there's more to it than just showing you a battery with an inverter and a way to get power away from the battery. It's a little bit more than that, because Ecoflow has introduced these expandable batteries that go right on top. And the thing about this is when you use expandable batteries, it recalibrates exactly what's going on with the battery immediately. So when I take this off, it says 76%, right? Now, you're not supposed to do this when the batteries are on, but I'm doing it for the purposes of here. But when you snap this in, it immediately recalibrates to 77%. So it takes into account this unit on the bottom, and it tells you that all power available is 77%. I think that's dope. This battery extender down here has a light bar that as it drains down, it will get close to 0%. That's cool. On the front of the battery expansion port itself, it actually includes USB-C port. It's a power delivery, and it's on the 3.1 standard, which means it can do 140 watts on this port alone, which I think is pretty dope. It's an in-out port, so it can do 140 watts in and up to 140 watts out. That's pretty cool. And one thing about this is that you can charge this thing while it has the battery on it. All right, so one thing I like about this unit so far is the charging speed. Look, I'm getting 735 watts in. That's because I'm getting 100 watts or so through the USB-C port on the expandable battery. If I unplug this, you'll see this drop down to 6. So I was getting about 90 watts from the USB-C port, which is not bad. If I plug this back up, it should jump up to about 730 something watts. Good to go. So I like that. You can also control the charging speed within the app, as you can always do in the Ecoflow app, which is great. But I'm liking the fact that you can really pump juice into these. If you need to, you can slow that charging speed down. So for instance, in real time, let's go into the Ecoflow app, and let's go to the charging settings. Let's change the input speed to, let's charge it to 400, and we'll charge it to about 456 watts. And then we're gonna save that. When we save that, you see this thing drop down to 550 watts. That's because it's only allowing us up to do 450 from AC plus the DC port on the expandable battery.
So if you really want to slow this down, preserve the life of the batteries, like I'm going to slow this thing down to 300 watts input from the AC ports. And then I will, let's see, so we'll save that at 300 watts. And then now it's going to be around 400 watts input with the DC.
Why would you want something like this? So you can detach this. This works on its own, and you can still use the USB-C port. So if you want to charge your aggressively hungry 16-inch MacBook Pro, then it can do this. It can keep that thing going for days. You can just leave this with your kids or your spouse or whatever. They can still charge their devices just with this battery. It doesn't need the inverter because that's all they really care about anyways. But if you want to really go full tilt, then you can snap it in, introduce an inverter, introduce solar charging, introduce the uninterruptible power supply feature, which we'll talk about here as well. And then it just gives you a lot of versatility. This is a really good unit if you want to use it for a Starlight, if you want to use it for just camping, if you want to use it for a lot of 12-volt systems, 12-volt, it's really, really good for that. One thing is this comes with the beefiest, literally the beefiest AC cable I've ever gotten. I think it has this big beefy part right here. And this, I think it's smart technology in this, because if these two units are not snapped together, then the top unit can only charge at 350 watts. But as soon as you snap them together, it can take itself up to 650 watts of charging. So I think that's why this cable is a smart cable. So you want to make sure you use the cable it comes with. It also comes with a USB-C B cable, which we'll talk about what that's going to be for. And then you're going to get a car charging cable. It is an XT60. I think it's an XT60i, but I think it still can only charge at 8 amps. So what are we going to use this USB-B port? Well, on the very back of the unit, there is the USB-B port. And you can download the drivers onto your computer. You can plug this into your computer and obviously plug this into the wall. And this will become an uninterruptible power supply for your NAS or for your desktop PC or your iMac or something like that. Meaning, if you lose power, this will cut on and begin to deliver power to your device. As long as you have the USB-C, the USB-B cable plugged into the USB-A port of your computer, once this thing is about to die, it sends a signal to your NAS or sends a signal to your computer to shut down properly. So this is like the real first competitor that is like for newer, these solar power stations, that's at an affordable price that can compete with an uninterruptible power supply. Those things are normally like lead acid batteries. They're normally loud. They're not portable. They're portable, but not this portable where you can take them camping and stuff like that. How do they compete with the technology of those things? I don't really know. Okay. But what I am saying is that if it can do 80% of what those UPS features can do and also give me all these features of an inverter and all this solar charging and all this other stuff, I think that's dope. So I think they're leading the way on that. They're also leading the way with this. I mean, just no cables whatsoever for this unit. This is a type of unit that you can plug in, use every day, but also use for an emergency situation. It's going to be great if you're in an apartment. You know, there are a few things that I have to do when I get these units that kind of lets me know how viable they are for the capacity test. So I have a capacity test, and I would turn this on and drain the battery completely. You see it's running 2 watts out of the inverter with nothing going on. So the way I tested this AC drain test out is we plug up here, and then we'll plug into we can plug into another device. All right, so when you see here, it jumps up to 536 watts being outputted. And basically I just plug up to whatever device I'm testing out and I drain this thing completely. And this is my first disappointing test for this unit, is that for my AC drain test, I had to do this several times. I did it here in the man cave. It was cold, so I did it again in my house where the batteries were a little bit warmer. And when I did this test, I got 230 watts out of 286 watts. That's 80%, right? And so that's a little disappointing to get 80% out of this unit. Usually when I test these units, I do hope to get 85 or 86% capacity testing for these type of units. However, let's just keep it real. That's like 14, 15 watt hours. Most people aren't going to care about that. They're just not going to. That's just something I think about because these things are brand new. I want to get as much capacity when they're brand new because it's going to take 3,000 cycles to get 80%, but it will, eventually the batteries do degrade. That's something I think about. So for the AC drain test, we got that. However, the DC drain test was significantly better. The DC drain test does take a little bit more effort, but so normally, all right, so for the DC drain test, I normally will hook this thing up into the DC port here. It can run up to 10 amps, and I normally will take my little tester here, and this tester, I will run it at, I'll do one test when I run it at 10 amps, and when I run it at 10 amps, it would normally drain this thing. It takes a while to do it, but as you can see, it's running 122 watts out of the DC port, and I'll drain this thing out. And then I'll do it again, and I'll run it at like 8 amps or maybe even 7 amps to see if I can get even better testing. But this thing did really good when it came to the DC test, and that's something that might be super important to you. This thing got 259 watt hours out of 286 watt hours. That's 90.5%, 91% damn near. So this thing's really efficient out of the DC port. And I think that the AC test, I tried to run it at 70 watts. But the batteries they do heat up more when you're using the inverter. So you lose a little bit more capacity just from the heating of the batteries. So that's still a pretty good test overall to just test it out. To look at is can it do at 600 watts? So I'm going to plug this into this Ecoflow River 2 Pro. The Ecoflow River 2 Pro is set up to only charge itself at 600 watts. Okay. So we should see the River 3 Plus get near its 600 watts or get all the way to its 600 watts. And it shouldn't be able to maintain that. This is a 600 watt inverter. It should even be able to go over that with no issues. All right, so I just bumped it up to 650 watts. I saved that in the app. When I bump this up to 650 watts, you see it's now putting out 652 watts. It still hasn't tripped the inverter. It's not supposed to run this high. So my next test is how long can it maintain its concurrent watts? So its concurrent watts is 600 watts. If it can do that until the thing, at least 2 minutes, I give it an 80%. If it can do the 600 watts until it dies, I give it a 100%. And if it can do more than that, that's really it. But you really shouldn't be pressing it this hard. But I have mine at 650 watts. It's still going, hasn't tripped it. So let's bump this thing up to 700 watts and see, will it trip the unit then? So we go to 700 watts. All right, so now I'm running it at 700 watts for the Ecoflow River 2 Pro. And okay, we just tripped the unit itself. So 700 watts, it did trip. You can expand this bad boy up to 858 watt hours. I have the battery 300, which is basically doubling this. This is a 286 watt hour unit. This battery's 286 watt hours. And if you buy it in this configuration, it's about $419. You can also get it with the battery 600, which is about a 572 watt hour unit, and that brings it up to that 858. So different ways to get this. Maybe you get both. Maybe you keep one in one place. Maybe you keep the other one in the other place. If it's $209 in this layout, and if you buy it with this River 300, it becomes $419. You may ask yourself, why not I just get a raw battery and just expand the life of my battery my own way, right? So this is a LiPo 4 battery. It's at 12.8 volts at 100 amps, which means it's about 1280 watt hours. This is over a kilowatt of storage, and it cost me $200, right? So even if you decide this is the solution that you want to go, because I have seemingly 10 times the storage, almost 10 times the storage of this battery 300 in this unit, and it cost actually a little bit less than the battery 300. But here's the thing. If you get this, it didn't come with an inverter to charge this. So I had to buy, you got to get the inverter to get juice back into this, or solar, or however the hell you're going to charge this up. You got to buy that. Also, it doesn't come with a cable to tap the power from this. So if you want to get power out of this battery, you have to buy the cable. You got to make sure you get an XT60i cable. And what you can do is you can actually take this, you can plug it up, and you can use this. And all the XT60i cable tells the Ecoflow that this is not a vehicle charger. It's a different type of charger. But you're going to see the input now is going to go, and you can use this seemingly like a battery expansion. So if you, but now you have to deal with a cable. This thing is humongous. Where do you store it? You know, the warranty on these batteries are kind of sketchy, right? But they're pretty affordable to get this much juice from a battery. You know, so now I am charging this at about 160 watts. And I think you can go higher than this. I think you can go up to 18 volts, you know, input on this. But this is a solution, but it's just not as clean as just buying the battery 300. If I had to go between the two for me personally, if I'm going to be taking this with me camping on the go and all that, I would just buy the battery 300 because it's way more convenient. Much more convenient to leave my teenagers this battery 300 and let them charge their devices versus lugging this thing around just to expand the life of my River 3 Plus. It's not a huge unit. If this was like a 1 kilowatt or 2 kilowatt unit, then they both would be so big, I might be more prone to just want to keep these together. All right, so what kind of stuff can you run with this? You can run your NAS system, as we talked about earlier. You know, you can run your NAS system just with the River 3 Plus for 5.5 hours. If this thing's at 100%, you lose power. 5.5 hours, that's pretty good to go. A car refrigerator at 60 watts, you can run that thing for almost 4 hours. You can run a regular refrigerator for 30 minutes. That's if it's pulling 400 watts the whole time. A regular fridge doesn't pull its full wattage normally the whole time. The compressor might kick it on, and then it normally kicks down to a running wattage. You know, it can run like a desktop computer, a monster desktop computer that's pulling 600 watts, which I own a PC. My PC doesn't just pull 600 watts at idle, but I can run it for 21 minutes. And you can run like a small electric kettle at 900 watts. Just make sure you turn on the X Boost mode. You can run that for 21 minutes. I have a 5% discount code through February 9th. Will get you a discount on this, which will bring it down to like 198, and let's call it 199. So you're getting 10, 11 more dollars off of this thing. It makes it much more interesting of a price because now that's dropping you below 70 cents a watt hour. And with all my other tests, my score with this is extremely high. When Ecoflow sent me the River 3, I was like deeply in love with it. I use this thing all the time for all sorts of stuff, you know, charging small devices, handing it to my teenagers at cheer and just telling them they can charge their stuff. I don't care if this thing gets beat up. It's a 300 watt inverter. It's plenty for charging their laptops and tablets and all that other type of stuff. I knew the River 3 Plus was on the horizon and I didn't see the value in it. But now that I have it, I see the value in it. This is going to replace the charging station on my coffee mess for any devices that need to be charged, YouTube cameras and stuff like that. You know, if I go camping or if I go hunting, this is the unit I want to take with me. I used to take this bigger River 2 Pro with me for camping or hunting, and as awesome as that thing is, it's heavier and it's not, you know, you can't pull it apart like you can do this unit. And this just makes a whole lot of sense for me as it stands right now. If you're going to be going into like emergency situations, you know, prayers for all those folks going through the wildfires. You know, we have like tornadoes where I live. You got hurricanes on the East Coast. You have blackouts in certain parts of the country. You get floods. Having some bit of power with you, I think, is incredibly important. The River 3 Plus, I think, feels that sweet spot of not wanting a 1 kilowatt hour because you can't afford it, or you don't have the room for it, or you just don't need it. But you need more than a 300 watt inverter. This makes a lot of sense. And it's even at $209, I think is dope. And then you can get the battery expansion later, or you can just get it now, especially with the discount code I have below, and it might make a lot of sense for you. So as I said earlier, my bottom line up front, I like this unit. Like I hate that I like the aesthetic so much, but EcoFlow is killing the game when it comes to making you want to use your products. Like, I want to use my EcoFlow products. If there's something going on, we have a 4-year-old birthday tomorrow. My son's turning 4. This thing's gonna get plopped on the kitchen counter, and then if anybody needs to charge something, I'm a-okay with it. It's aesthetically pleasing. I'm sure folks are not gonna have a problem just using it. This thing is really, really dope. There's some units that are kind of just like, they stay in the garage, they stay in your attic until the power goes out and you actually need them. That's going to be some units. That's not this one. I think that this is something that you might be able to get down with. First time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you a part of the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.